economy. My name is Stefano Fergulia, together with Sean, whose picture you can see here. We have designed this together pretty much. We met in November 2019, just before the pandemic kicked in, and we thought, we're both working on urine. We want to go beyond technology and actually make it happen, just create this new economy where we can pull nutrients out of urine and resell them with multiple benefits across the value chain with multiple stakeholders. And we talked a lot about this in the first part of the meeting. And but first, let's just start properly. Let's do an acknowledge the country, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting today. For those that are meeting here in person, we have Turban and Jagger people of Brisbane. We have people in Sydney and Lismore, and other people also in different parts of Brisbane. So I would like to pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. So before we get going, Tony will give you a little bit of a briefing about facilities and safety.
Thanks, Stefano. We seem to be getting some great traction with this project. Every meeting we've had, we've sort of compounded the number of people that have attended. For those that haven't met me, my name's Tony Sutton. I'm a representative for City Parklands. To give you, I guess, just an introduction of the facility here. So all the amenities are just over to the left through the door and up the stairs. There's amenities on either side. You'll note our evacuation plan just at the exit door there. The emergency assembly is directly out the door. You would have seen two bins at the front entry of Spectacle Garden. That's our assembly point there. Not that I believe we'll have any emergencies today, but if we do, if we can assemble there. And then lastly, there's obviously water and masks and pen paper and sanitizer on the front desk. So welcome and thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tony. So before we start, Sean and I wanted to ask you if you're okay if we record this so that it can be used for people that were not able to attend today. So if there's any objection, just let us know now before we start. This is going to be primarily a presentation, and then there's going to be some interactive discussion about some of the key points. Yes, so let's just press next one.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so perhaps Sean, would you like to say something? Sean is the director of the new center. He's based at UTS. So maybe you can say the first few words before we move into production. It's Adam Fukina.
Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
There's just a lot of feedback when you're talking, so you have more than one device.
I just mute just a second.
Also put the volume to mute and
yeah, can you hear me?
yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Stefano, and then thank you, everybody. Good morning. This is very great to see all of you, and then very happy to see the face-to-face meeting in Brisbane. I really envy for your face-to-face meeting today. So still, yeah, Sydney is locked down, and also Melbourne is a little bit of a problem, but it's very great to see Brisbane North. It's very active to start our NiCE hub. So this is a great pleasure to be part of the today's kickoff meeting. And thank you, Stefano. Also, thank you everybody, because we have progressing very well because of your strong collaboration and that engagement. So I just want to summarize what happened after our successful outcome. So we got a good outcome last July, and then since then we had discussed with many partner investigators and chief investigators to negotiate our progress, how we can design our contribution for the research activities. Also, we have a little bit of difficulty for the this pandemic because of the financial issues. So some of our existing industry partner have withdrawn this project, so that we are now looking for some of the new partners. So we are very happy to attract more stakeholders, such as Southeast Water in Melbourne, also Melbourne Water, and some of the technology company in also Sydney, as well as the Korea and China. So we are attracting more industry partners to collaborate more interesting project for next 5 years. So that's the very good news. Also, next step will be now is also I didn't mention about Benedict, so University of South Queensland. So Benedict also has attracted the PICOL industry partner for circular economy in anaerobic biosolid recovery system. Also, City Council, she has incorporated together with the industry cash contribution and in-kind. So Benedict in USQ will be also very active to develop our AIC NiCE hub. And for the next step will be Stefano and myself. We will contact you individually to make 2 contracts. One is the umbrella contract, so make sure that your IP and then make sure that all the general AIC agreement we need to sign, first step. And then second step will be how to allocate the research funding from industry partners, and then AIC funding and university CI. The project leader should be university staff, so university CI will lead the project together with the industry partner, and then we will support AIC cash funding. So that's the next step. We will sign the individual research project. So you will receive the second agreement very soon, and then as soon as you sign all 2 agreements, so we can start, because this agreement will be individually made, because it's very difficult to all-in-one project agreement. So we want to go for the industry and the university chief investigator. So if they agree, so we can start anytime, maybe end of this year or early next year. But if you little bit delay for your partner organization, so we can possibly start middle of next year. So it's a little bit flexible to start your project based on your urgency, or based on your time frame. We can try to follow your project delivery. Also, I assume that most of project, all the agreement will be signed by middle of next year. So we will have official launching in Sydney. Possibly we can invite the AIC executive team, and then we will invite all of you, and then have official kickoff and then launch meeting. But in the meantime, so yeah, feel free. Brisbane node is one of the very important project in this AIC hub. So we are very happy to support. So anytime, please contact Stefano and myself. We are very much support your project and then delivery, and then happy to work together for next 5 years. Great to see all of you, and then hopefully you can enjoy Stefano Brisbane node meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, and congratulations for your hard work that brought us here today. So let me see what I can share. Let's share this presentation to start with. Trust everyone can see it, both from here certainly and before. So we just do that. Somehow it's shown still up there. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, so let's leave the introductions for a bit later, because otherwise we just keep talking and we don't get to the point. So we explain a bit about what this is. A lot of you have been involved from the very start or even before. So some of these things are not new, but certainly it's going to be something new for everyone that we're going to talk about today. So nutrients in circular economy, I already mentioned. Sean and I had this idea over a glass of wine in Melbourne in November 2019. And 1 year of hard work, we managed to get funding for RC Hub, which is a really competitive and hard scheme. So roughly, and there's some error there, but over 2 million cash from the RC, over 1.5 million cash from industry, and Sean said, now we're just balancing the losses with the new partners. And also, let's not forget, the university put in over 1 million, mostly in the form of PhD scholarships. But the PhD students are real people that do real work, so that's real money as well there that goes into supporting this. This might increase because, as Sean said, we are negotiating with another partners. So, okay, so what's the vision of NiCE? So obviously nutrients in the circular economy. So key partnership to transform the wastewater industry and build confidence for a market in reusing primarily urine as a source of fertilizer for agriculture, horticulture, particularly urban farming and parklands. So this is not another little project where we come up with an idea for a technology, we test it in the lab, we do a scaled-up system, we produce co-papers, and then that's the end of it. We produce the final reports, and then we don't know what to do next. This is actually coming from previous projects, particularly one with urban utilities when I was at UQ, where we did the preliminary and not so preliminary testing, 3 years of testing for one of the two technologies. Sean had a similar project down in Sydney. So this is not about demonstrating a new technology, this is about making something new happen. So transforming. This is a transformative scheme. And to enable the transformation, we are not only going to demonstrate technology, but we bring in all the stakeholders so that we have end user involvement. Who's going to use this new fertilizer? We're going to look at the safety of this new fertilizer. We're going to look at what needs to be done to collect the urine. We don't have that here in Australia, so there's a lot of barriers, and we have brought in the right team of academics with regulators that are here in the room to work together on trying to find a way to go through those barriers in an acceptable and safe way. So this is very exciting because it's really beyond what we've ever done before. So this was a list of the original partners. You can see there's quite a few. In this scheme, the industry hubs. No, we have many projects that have got one partner putting in $5 million, and that's it. This is very different. This is a really, truly collaborative integration of a multitude of fields. You can see the construction industry, utilities, fertilizers, end users like Parkland and the City Botanical Gardens, City Sydney, and also international partners. So we're welcoming new partners. As Sean said, Southeast Water is the only one that we can announce because they have confirmed, but we are talking with at least 3 or 4 more utilities and other tech companies. There's hydrogen coming into the picture, and potentially other end users, but those talks are a little bit preliminary. So we're very excited to see this expand from where it was just a few months ago. So to make this happen, as we said, we just cannot just focus on technology. And that's why we came up with this. This is the same that Sean has behind him, and it's the grand scheme of NiCE. So NiCE is the core, and we have 4 themes. The 4 themes are arranged around the different aspects that we need to enable. And first, and very important, is urine collection. So how do we safely collect urine without causing a nuisance, without causing plumbing issues, and with user acceptance? Because how we get people to be happy with. So there's projects in there. Urine processing is basically the follow-up of previous projects, including the one with urban utilities. We want to demonstrate further the scalability and the robustness of these processes to real field conditions where you have unpredictable factors. And then linking to optimization of fertilizers. At the moment, we're just producing one thing. It worked, we tested it. Sean tested his on a number of different plants with quite a bit of success, but is it optimized? No. And so we're working with a team of agronomists and soil scientists. That is here from University of Southern Queensland, but we also have Western Sydney University that are going to do tests down in Sydney. And finally, end users includes councils. We have the city sitting involved, BCC here today, so we're hoping that they can get a little bit more of a presence from now on, city parklands, but also going beyond. So we have a small company in Sydney that does urban farming, and that's really where we want to start. So how we can go from just putting fertilizer onto the lawn, onto grow ultimately products that are higher use for society good in the long run. So this is the circle, but around it, to enable this, we need to build business models. So Syed here from Griffith, they're gonna do some of that work. So that is really the key. So we can work out with the pieces, but if it doesn't work from an economic standpoint, so it's not going to happen like everything else. So we're going to work it out. We have good ideas, the preliminary models to show that we believe in it, but now we get the experts on board to do it. And finally, engagement, learning, and communication, as we said before, and user acceptance and toilet user acceptance are essential. So we're going to engage with the users throughout the experience. So they're going to walk into this toilet, and it's going to be an experience for them. It's just not going to be something that they go in and do it quickly. They're going to just walk out of there enlightened. That's our inspiration. Our goal. But we got some. You will see later, like some pictures of toilets that you will want to walk into.
To your contributions.
Okay, so I'm going to talk too much. So I want to keep an eye on time because at the end I'd like to leave the last half an hour to just talk and then give a chance to everyone to ask your questions and give your opinion. But this all starts from the problem of nutrients. This is just a picture of Australia, but similar around the world. Australia particularly is poor in nutrients, so we import all the nutrients that we need for growing our food. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, $1.5 billion market, all coming in mostly from overseas, except the small streams here and there. And we grow our food, and 25% of that to export, so that those nutrients lead to the food we export. And unfortunately, a lot of agricultural processes are not optimized. Well, it's very hard to optimize something when you're trying to grow sugarcane or wheat on a large piece of land. So at least half of the nutrients ends up being lost for the utilization of ammonia or runoff. And then eventually 15 to 20% comes to our table as food. So that's what we have. And because as humans, we consume a lot of carbon to energize our body, converting it into CO2, the nutrients are just basically imbalanced. We replace all protein and all cell material with new one, and so we excrete as much as we put in. And so we find all of that into wastewater. Urine is just happening to be a nice component of wastewater because it contains the majority of nutrients, as shown. So this also allows me to introduce the node structure of NiCE, and that's because we have large urban centers in Australia where we have a concentration of urine, which is what we need. And so at the beginning there was the Sydney node where UTS is, They're leading this hub, and they've developed technology there. And so there's going to be a node there involving Sydney and botanical gardens, and now they're talking to Sydney water again, so fingers crossed. Second node is Brisbane. It's here. It's historically coming from a collaboration between myself and urban utilities. We believed in this before many other people did, and now we've got the opportunity to scale it up. So the node structure is really related to where we're going to have scaled up trials and demonstration. Here is going to be at right here somewhere West Street Parkland in Sydney. It's going to be at the UTS building, as well as the botanical gardens, and maybe they also will have a pass. Yeah. So a lot of option there. And Melbourne, actually, because now we're starting to get Southeast Water, and Melbourne Water is talking to us as well. So they're quite interested in it, but at the moment they will just come onto the existing project. But longer term, we're going to have demonstrations there too. Melbourne University, where I work, they're going to build a new campus. It's going to be up in 2025, and I already talked them into introducing an entirely urine diverter building. So that's going to be the first one in Victoria, and it's going to be a fantastic place because they're also going to have a wastewater treatment plant on site, so that we can immediately switch on and off the urine and see what happens. And that's just in 2025. So quite a bit of excitement there, although a little bit delayed. So why urine? Everybody knows that if you pee on the lemon tree, they grow better, and that's because they contain urine contains the nutrients that are needed for plants. So the majority of the nitrogen, which is what you need, is in the form of urea, because we excrete our nitrogen as urea because it's not toxic to us. But then there's proportionally phosphorus, potassium, and other nutrients, and also non-nutrients like sodium. So it's still 95% water, so it's still quite dilute, but it's much better than the rest of the sewer stream. The big picture, which is shown in this slide, is so far what we've been doing is linearly produce and use nutrients. So we fix nitrogen from the air using natural gas that uses 2% global greenhouse. It's responsible for 2% of global greenhouse emissions. That's equivalent to the whole aviation industry combined. Then we just use it to grow crop. We lose some of it, we eat it, we excrete it, and so it's either destroyed to go back to nitrogen gas using more energy, or it's dishing out into the environment where it causes eutrophication and other problems. For phosphorus, even worse. We have limited resources. Some experts say that we'll run out in 100 years of the easy to harvest one, and also geopolitically sensitive because it's located mostly in 2 or 3 countries, including Morocco, Western Sahara, and China, United States. But the majority is there. So it makes sense, particularly for a country that doesn't have any nutrients in their soil, to try and close that loop.
Is that a global greenhouse gas? You know what the Australian contribution?
Well, because we're a small country to be small, but so we export 25% of the nutrients that we bring in. So actually half of the food we produce we export, but that's only 50%. So if we're 25 million people, we export food to 25 million people, so we still count the millions in the global picture. We know we need to move to net zero, right? So not much point you put solar panels on every roof if you're still growing food using this really energy intensive and high carbon footprint method. So, and this, thanks Sean, I took this slide from him. So this is now to show urine versus the rest of our sewage. So less than 1% is the volume. So we pee about 1 liter a day or more, but we consume 170 liters per person a day. So you can do your math and you see how much urine comes in our sewage stream. That 80% the nitrogen is in urine. 65% is phosphorus in urine, and also micropollutants are antibiotics and so on. They tend to split, but not every pollutant splits equally between the two. And we find that quite a bit of the antibiotics that are concerned are found in urine. So it's nice to have that stream separated if we are concerned about the system as well. The benefits. So we already talked about making food production more sustainable and potentially enhancing food security for a country like Australia. One day, Western Sahara say, we'll stop exporting. China says we're keeping phosphorus here. Not so unlikely. Then, this really puts the rest of the world in a difficult situation. And reduction of energy associated with production of fertilizer, but also nutrient removal from wastewater. With more than that, we found that there's some major savings in the energy needed to treat wastewater because nitrogen removal is the biggest power sucker there. And also, especially for a dry country, we go, someone just saying, like Australia, saving flushing water is also quite attractive, and we don't have to move to everything waterless if that's too difficult. And even if we move to low flushing, the amount of water we save there will be really substantial and really adds up. Because 20% of our domestic water consumption is for flushing. Vitamin A. So next, okay, we want to move into a circular type of system. We already discussed. Okay, so what has been done before to give us some confidence? Well, as we said, we tried technologies here in Sydney and here in Sydney, but these are technologies once the urine is being harvested. But in terms of harvesting urine, there's quite a bit of history, particularly in Europe. Sweden has really believed in it for quite a few decades, so there's a lot of practice there, so it does happen. Switzerland, Erwag, next to Zurich, they have two buildings entirely source separated, so men and women's toilets completely source separated. They've been doing it for over a decade, and they developed their own technology and their own product that they're now commercializing. It's just too expensive because their technology is still too energy intensive, and that's where we come in with something much better here. And also United States, but if you keep searching, you find case studies here and there. And also, let's not forget that in Queensland, we had the Currumbin Eco Village. Cara is not here yet, but she'll be here in a while. She had another meeting. She was behind all that. So it was a nice test there, total failure. So we actually have people here in our hub that have been involved in failed trials. So they know what can go wrong, and now we know what we can do to make it work better. Sydney, where Sean sits, not today because he's working from home, they have all waterless urinals and separate pipes and a tank at the bottom of the building. It's been going for quite a few years, and it needs occasional maintenance, but not too hardcore, so it can be done even here in Australia. And we want to involve not only the gentlemen into this donation scheme, but everyone. So we might not even have separate toilets, but we have unisex toilet, and then everyone can use it. I think that in 2021, that would be the way to go for a project that aims to be inclusive. So this is just one example, but there's actually quite a few that keep coming up. And the waterless urinals do work. They are at the airport and the shopping centers. You might not even realize it, and they need specific maintenance, but if you're smart, the maintenance is manageable. And this is the latest one where you don't really have to do anything. The first ones You might have to push a button or sit down, apply pressure to close and open hole. This one is designed so the urine forms a sheet and just escapes through a secret exit, whereas everything else is not. But yeah, so we haven't decided what we're gonna put into our toilet here, but we have a toilet here, we have some in Sydney, later on in Melbourne, so we can try different models. So any planner you talk to will tell you this doesn't work. This is just it's not the way to go. And they're right. If you don't do it right, you'll just scale the pipe. So you actually added at luggage point. We have a toilet block there with a pilot system, and occasionally you just block that. And but simply, if you have urine standing somewhere, it will block it. But the trick is how you can make it as vertical as possible, avoiding vent. So it has to really be factored in the design of the building, and that's why the development industry needs to be involved as well. But for these trials, we might just do something like that demandable on the right, where can we stay away from any problem with the blocking. All those are managed. There's a lot of different ways to do it. This, for example, the one we have at luggage point is 2 hydrophobic sheets that just stick to each other, preventing all of them coming back up. And when you wee on them, they just separate and let the urine flow receiving back. So far we've made liquid fertilizers. So this is what we're gonna start from. We may, expand and introduce new types of fertilizers, but this is what we'd like to start with, because liquid fertilizers are actually quite a large market in Australia. So starting from 500,000 forecast to go to 700 million. So they're actually more expensive than the solid stuff they use in soil, so MAP and DAP and urea, phosphoric acid, that has very little margin. But if you're using a liquid fertilizer, normally they're used within cities, in parks, gardens, or by private individuals, and therefore there's a markup there, where per kilogram of nitrogen they sell easily at $20 per kilo. And at that entry level, it would be easy to build something that works from a business point of view. And also there's news that say urban farming is the future. Well, we want to move towards there, just avoid the long transports of food across hundreds of kilometers by truck or even by ship or airplane, just making local what you can make local. So certainly, you start from green walls and gardens, but then you can make vegetables and fruits easily locally. Other things are harder to make locally because they need a lot of land. There's a lot that can be done. So bringing everything in close to the city will actually change completely the way of living, so transformative in multiple ways. So this is just some pictures from the toilet block I was telling you about with the urban utilities. It was 3 years English project with the University of Queensland, where I was working at the time. So there's some pictures of the cells that Adam, who's on the line, designed, and those are the waterless urinals that we used. And yeah, when you start to do these things, you get media attract attention very quickly. And I'm getting now in Melbourne just by announcing that we got this new hub. I got 3 interviews with BBC Radio within the first week. So we're gonna get a lot of attention. So we're going to be the city that hosts the Olympics in 2032, and how nice it would be if we can have this implemented in the Olympic Village. So this is the process that, and don't need to talk much about this because this is not the point here, but just to show you a nice picture, it's a process where we have bacteria that chew up the urine, move electrons around the circuits, and at the same time move ions across membranes. We produce the liquid fertilizer, which is a concentrate of a small ions present in urine, mostly are nutrients. And And the goal has always been no power, no chemicals, no process control. We demonstrated that it works much better if you apply a little bit of power, and you get a lot more weights and density of processing happening. And so this is what we really have done, and this is also the basis of what we plan to do at the Brisbane power plant. So it's just a scheme of the reactor, but as you know, this will have hydrogen produced at the plant. And that's good and bad. We'll talk about that, because when we start to scale up, there's quite a bit of hydrogen there. A hazard, but also an opportunity to actually do energy recovery and really bring the energy consumption, net energy consumption down very low level. So this is the fertilizer that we produced. So we don't have to look at all the technical things, but if you're interested in what was in the product, it was a liquid with 2.7% nitrogen, very low phosphorus. So that was one of the issues there. We lost the phosphorus at multiple points, something to work on in the future. Potassium, sulfur, so all good. We also had a lot of micronutrients like cobalt, zinc, something you don't find in a lot of chemically produced fertilizers. Also organic matter with form of acetate here, so it might not be the best form of organic matter, but when you put it on soil, it will convert it into biomass very quickly, and that might help with the soil function. And sodium is always there because we eat salty food, and that's sort of our enemy. We need to manage it. So how we manage that is something we will work on for a year and a half. And yeah, this is when tomatoes growing on the right on the Yugo fertilizer. That should be just water. Okay, so Chris was talking to me at the start about what happens to antibiotics. So we will look at that through Project Griffith. We will look also at microbial risks in a more comprehensive, holistic way. But at the time we were piloting this technology back at Larry's Point, we did test whatever we could find in there, and we could find a lot of stuff. So all those, you might recognize some compounds, paracetamol, caffeine, of course, nicotine, and there's also there's antibiotics, there's a lot of stuff that I don't even know what it is, but it's all our pharmaceuticals. And it's a huge range of concentrations. Some are active at low concentrations, so we don't take a lot. But paracetamol, we just take loads of it. And so if we look at the removal, which is these bars, they're all around 99%, but there's a few exceptions. So we need to look at what happens to those compounds. They're probably small, they're probably polar, and they can actually go to the membranes to some extent. So we really need to go into a lot of details here to see what the real risk at each one of them. Paracetamol, because it's so concentrated, despite we remove most of it, you can still measure close to 1 milligram per liter in the product. So, but we take 500 milligram, 1,000 milligram for one pill. So you can imagine there's a heap of it in the urine. So that's 30,000 micrograms, so 30 milligrams per liter in urine. So this is going to be addressed further, thanks to Anne, who is going to be leading this project out of Brisbane. And so this is the Sydney process. Let's go through it just very quickly, but it's completely different. It's based on firstly oxidizing the organic matter and the ammonium to nitrate, but only half of it. So then you have ammonium nitrate. It's not explosive because it's not concentrated. And then you distill it out and you make your product that has a very similar composition to the one. This is what Sean has been developing over the last few years. He's a membrane guy, so he likes to put membranes into everything. And so we get membrane barrier there and membrane distillation. So, but they are actually further ahead than here in terms of their trials on they have vertical bonding, just fertilized with this stuff. and some nice pictures from their setup as well. And so we will interact with them. The Brisbane node is going to be based on this technology, we call it U-Gold. And the Sydney node is going to mostly be based on the U-Val technology, but everything is going to be eventually showcased in Sydney when we have that event, whenever we can host an event. We have one reactor, U-Gold reactor down in Sydney already, but no one can get it at the moment. There's no urine either, they dried up completely. So the challenge is coming. So this is the list of projects. So it's 12, I think. And you all have received the two proposals. If you haven't, just let me know and we'll send you the full proposal. But under these projects, there's that circular scheme that I showed you at the beginning. So toilet design, technology, fertilizer, and users, economics, and engagement. So within the Brisbane node, so we define the Brisbane node by activities that are led by institutions here in Brisbane and around the pilot demonstration here in Western Thailand. And so project 2.1 is upscaling of people's technology right here. 3.2, assessment of chemicals, biological safety through Griffith. Project 4.3 is through USQ, evaluation and demonstration of these fertilizers in field trials, and O1, or overall one, whole systems economics, which is really quite an important one. The engagement will be run out of Sydney, but we will be included here as well. So this is the picture of projects that will be happening. They don't all have the same cost. Can you imagine the pilot is going to be more costly than many others? Let's keep this one. It's just like more words for what I just said, and then we get to tell you something about the U-Gold pilot. So I soon will call upon Adam because we have co-designed this together. Adam is AJJA technology based in Lismore. It's a startup. But Adam is really cunning on electrochemistry and really can help see things that academics don't see. So coupling an academic with a really wise industry experts can lead us to some very good technology. So this is just my sketch, but this is going to happen here. We're going to have toilets right under this tank. All the urine long enough that it hydrolyzes, so urea becomes ammonia, and scale drops to the bottom of the tank. Don't want to deal with that. And we pump it into 3 stacks. Each stack might, I forgot the number of cells, it might be 10 in each one of them, but each one is designed for 100 liters a day of urine. And they will be recirculated without pumps, and will be run by a power supply, which on average will consume half a kilowatt. So at capacity, 300 liters per day of urine is what we have promised in the proposal. As you noticed, we might not actually be able to do that. So we pull the nutrients out that flow out on their own into fertilizer stream for running capacity 30 liters per day. That will go to Bernadette, into Wombat, to Big Trial, and at Griffiths to do some testing, but we might actually want more. So City Parkland might want to trial some right here. And that's why we need to consider what are the regulatory constraints on this. And then we had Graham say it on the line, and he said we might take some and try it out up the sunny coast on some of these trees at Nutritech technology. So what is not pulled out is just waste. So 90% of the water is rejected together with the antibiotics. At the moment, we just dump it into sewer, but follow-up projects could include treating it to remove the antimicrobial potential from it. We said So 30 liters per day, that's quite a bit, and that's why we are also thinking, okay, so within the time frame of this hub, can we actually set up something so we can actually bottle it and sell it? So this might not be profitable initially, but it would be a huge way to showcase it, and like they're doing in Switzerland at the moment. And so producing that much on a regular basis might help us set up a new company and a production line. So that hydrogen I talked about, if we run at capacity 4 cubic meter a day, could be converted by fuel cell to 0.3 kilowatts. So you can see you can recover more than half the energy put in. It's already low energy, so it's around like 4 to 5 kilowatt hour per kilogram of nitrogen. But potentially, we didn't think about that before, but rather than dealing with hydrogen, we could reuse it straight away to recover energy and improve the energy balance. So, yeah.
There's no 3 liters on 3 stages, but they also runs balance.
Therefore, it means four cubic meters.
What's that like?
It's not much. So my brain works to kilowatt hours. So if you can actually convert it into 0.05 kilowatt hour per person per day, which is 1% of your electricity consumption. But you don't feed a lot of carbon. So and that's really all the carbon in the pea that is converted to electrons and then are converted to hydrogen. So Adam has a few slides. So I'll just bring up his presentation and you're just going to talk a couple of things so you can see what's going to be inside that box before we talk about where we locate it, do we get enough urine, and what are the issues and constraints. So I'll share this other one. It's the one. It's the same one.
You have to go into the folder.
Is it open?
No,
it's
I
not
haven't
open.
opened it, so go into the folder.
Adam, are you here?
Yep, got you. Got you loud and clear.
Want to
Right.
introduce yourself while I pull this up?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're Adam Blunt. You got 5 kids. So Tony here is not the only one.
And they can contribute a lot of urine.
So this is one way we get partners that have a lot of kids so that we can get more urine.
It's called benchmarking.
Okay, so, all right. He's in Lismore. So did you get out of lockdown or still?
We're still in lockdown. Well, stay-at-home orders, I think they call them in New South Wales, and stay out of Queensland orders from Queensland. Hopefully that'll change soon, and it'll change eventually. So I'm looking forward to getting back up there. Have you got the presentation up, Stefano?
Yes, when you tell me next, I'll just.
Okay. Could I get you to share the screen?
Yeah, sure.
So you've got it up, but you're going to show
Oh,
So just, it's isn't it?
I know how to do stuff. It's just that we have a 1-month-old at home, so I didn't sleep that much. So, I share this screen. Is that good?
Yep, I can see that now.
Just share the whole screen. Right. So actually already, okay.
So if you want to scroll through, just leave them up for a few seconds. I'll give you a brief background on AJJA. We started several years ago after I'd left another startup And we've been working on aspects of electrochemistry for nearly 20 years now, working in, and over that time looking at sugar electrochemistry and electrodialysis, acid mine drainage and environmental applications. And in a previous company that's now, that I'm not engaged with now, we also did some early design for Stefano. So what we're thinking of for the pilot is to containerize the system. We can actually include everything that we need in a container. It allows us to build an easy bund, so we can make sure we capture any spillages, and the container actually makes it very easy to obviously to transport to site. But you can see in the first couple of slides, we've got a 20-foot container that's got side opening doors. We can actually provide, it's relatively simple to wall some of that off with Perspex and provide a very easy way to show it off, as well as provide convenient access for operators, people that need to do any maintenance or use the system in that way. So we can build enclosed, and when I say build, this is one that we actually have ready, and I have earmarked for this project. We've installed a control system, lighting, full distribution of electricity. The cell and the tanks that you see there are a small pilot we did on another project, but that's really about the size of the pilot cell that we're proposing and that we've designed. So there'll be a few changes to it. That cell is a 2-chamber cell, and you'll know from Stefano's presentation that the U-Gold system is a 3-chamber cell. That design works nicely for a single cell, but if we want to increase the number of cells in a stack, we need to add an extra 2 holes into the system. So you can see an inlet and an outlet on that system. If you scroll through to the next slide, Stefano, as we put it all together, that system has 2 chambers, and if you consider that in building that, we'll have a membrane between the 2 open chambers. So between the 2 open chambers there, right in the middle, we'll have an ion exchange membrane. That's how we form a 2-chamber cell. By simply putting in another open chamber and an extra membrane, we form our 3-chamber cell. So if you want to go to the next slide. Effectively, one of the things that we need to take particular care of is getting flow distribution. So making sure that the liquid doesn't channel and really have dead spots and dead zones in the system. So this is our design for a 2-chamber cell. And if you go to the next slide, Stefano, this is one of the adjustments that we've made for a 3-chamber cell. So you'll notice the extra holes and the different distribution. We will have the cell designed with different depth in the chambers. So I think the next slide has a great slide. Yeah, you can see as Stefano changes back and forward rapidly, you can see the change in depth. We can adjust that as we need to, and we adjust where the flow distribution enters, and that in that way we manage a couple of things. We manage the bowing of the membranes. We manage the ability of a membrane system to handle a small level of solid material. So basically suspended solids, which we expect to have biological or entrained. And the conventional wisdom is that when you play with electrochemistry and ion exchange membranes, you really need to avoid any particulates in the system. It's not, and that is true of many systems. But if we structure this correctly and incorporate these wider cell designs, we can actually accommodate quite a lot of suspended solids, and it doesn't really impact so much on the performance of the system. So in saying that, the idea of this presentation is really just to give you an idea of what the system could look like and the general principle of design for the pilot cell itself. The final slide is actually an operational pilot at an AMD site, which we've actually made that compact because we needed to, but that has 3 pumps in there. You can see 2 clearly, the other one's at the back. It has a control system, power supply. We're actually venting gases out of the system, and that'll be one of the things that we will need to consider carefully, because the moment we have hydrogen, most occupational health and safety legislation doesn't differentiate between a small amount and an industrial amount of hydrogen. So we actually we'll have to navigate the industrial and safety legislation for production of hydrogen and make a case that we can do this safely, because hydrogen's, is only ever seen by regulators as an explosion hazard. But effectively, doing it in a pilot, we can manage all of this. We can vent gases, we can separate gases, we can manage solutions pretty carefully. Does that cover what you need, Stefano?
Thanks, Alan. That's for this stage really quite a bit. So just a couple of points that probably need to be discussed rather urgently. First thing is the ethics. So Parklands has indicated that container on a beautiful park doesn't look appealing in any form. So how easy is it to just mount it inside a beautiful looking shed instead?
Sorry, could you say that again, Stefano?
Rather than a container, can we actually put it into a shed that harmoniously blends into the surroundings?
Camouflage.
It's actually very easy. So if you scroll back to slide 3, that's actually a skid-mounted system. So you can see that it's on a frame. We've got the control box on it. So that wouldn't be the design that I would use for U-Gold, because it's a little more complex, but it's easy enough to build that as a system that we can slip into a shed, or however you want to, however we're able to deploy it.
Urban art.
I think that, it's the theme, the corrugated look raises eyebrows.
So it's easy to actually, camouflage, put a paint and art and everything, and also put some papers at the top, leave that and open. You will see like all the plants are grown, so it's easy to hide.
Fertilized plant.
So, but it sounds like this is pretty important.
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the challenges we face in city parklands. We manage close to 100 hectares of public space that's open 24/7. Public perceptions our business. That's why we do what we do. That 100 hectares ranges from Southbank Parklands, Rome Street to now Victoria Park. So it's really important that I think whilst we advocate this great message, that it's presentable, and I think that that's achievable. We just haven't landed on that point yet. I think also the logistics of it as well, to really try and advocate that minimal impact, but yet advocating such a great outcome. And perhaps then that's a great idea about when you look at it as an educational piece, that having something growing over using the byproduct could be, oh wow, gee, that's really green, this is a great thing. And that's something as well that we need to look at, is the logistics in actually capturing 300 litres a day is somewhat problematic. And some of the early tests that we've done was just with simple door counters to see how often people are going in and out. And at the moment, those numbers don't stack up. So do we need to consider the flexibility of having, during an event mode or an event where we get larger visitation, how do we put something in there that isn't standing out but still tells a story, and we also market this particular project, but then perhaps we've then got to transfer it back to a processing plant such as this, and they're the challenges that we're looking at the moment.
So I know that COVID has put a lot of actual costs on all the systems. What what is also thinking is there's a lot of events coming in. Every event has Portalo. The Portalo itself should be a system
Yeah.
where it's a sustainable community. I mean, this is across Australia, talking about like courts hire or someone who's actually doing the Portalo itself.
That'd be a good industry.
That will be the best harvesting module you can get.
Yeah.
It was interesting,
Well,
Cecil, that one of the images that got sent back to me was the ponds in the Netherlands, which has just been open, you know, and that was something that was mentioned and said, oh, look, this would be great for, you know, an event. Okay, and so I think there's traction there. It's just really bedding down what is a good solution to capture and manage this logistically that doesn't become a burden on cost on the project.
And socially acceptable. Because it's going to be confused with, you know, some of those composting toilets smell, and so you don't want it to look like those. You want it to.
Yeah, we'll get to the look of the toilet in one of the next slides. I'll touch on to also those counters so that I give an estimate of where we are in terms of how much urine we can get and where we want to be. We're not there, so what are we going to do? But so
Is it the design of both the toilet block and the processing plant, or is it just the processing plant?
So this is a processing plant. So it's
really governed by the location of both products. I mean, there needs to be a story that ties the two together. But when we first started discussing this, we hadn't actually signed up to manage the Victoria Park activation. Now that we've got that, that's obviously raised some additional opportunities to go. We've got 60 hectares of open space that's got a myriad of activation options that are coming. You know, I'm sure that there's going to be discussions around the Olympics and what happens there. So that's often the project some flexibility. So what can we do to design that into this redevelopment of this particular area? But at the same time, what can we do as a temporary solution that we could potentially look at other events at Rome Street or even South Beach?
Without having lots of pipes with elbows.
Yeah. Look, people will generally, the general public, they'll send a complaint if the grass isn't green enough. So you can imagine if something that's like, hang on, what is this? We come to the park to enjoy this beautiful green space, and I've got a donger that's got a sump on it, you know, on the middle of Celebration Lawn.
yeah, the key is to make it better looking than the toilets that are already here. So if people can live with the toilets that are
High
here.
tech.
Yeah. So, all right.
So on that point, Stefano, I think what's really important is actually the adoption and the feedback. So the education piece is really vital. So some of the comments that were made there about it, you know, if it just looks and appears like a long drop toilet, then we probably haven't been successful in bringing our customers and our community along on the journey. And I think it's really important that, you know, some of the points are being raised by the other stakeholders. If they're married into that, it'll be a much better solution. It'll be more actively engaged by the community. I think if the community doesn't have this high level of adoption towards it or this curiosity to embrace it, then we've probably missed getting the volume into the toilet, missed getting the engagement, and all sorts of things. So I think this part is probably key to attracting people into the product. But then the product also needs to be, oh wow, this looks fantastic. How great's this? Doesn't stink, doesn't smell, attractive, acceptable. I wish I had one, you know, and maybe there's some ways around capturing people's experience when they walk in and walk out, you know, as to the perception around your own separation was this, and then when they left, it was that. And so some of this could really help with the adoption and the design of future products as well.
Absolutely. And that project O2 that we got is really around also some of these issues. So we already led, yes, but Cara just joined, is going to be the node representative. So we're thinking, you know, things like immediate feedback, like on an iPad, like when you walk out of the airport toilets and you just tell them what your experience was like, but also more structured interviews for people that volunteer for it, so that we can, you know, improve as we go based on the feedback that we get. I think that's a really extremely relevant point, and it could be really make or break. If people don't like it, it's gonna stop there. The circle has to be connected, and this is probably the most essential one, together with the farmers or parts being able to use the final product.
That is part of the business case as well, like corruption and competitive rules that will affect the overall outcome.
Okay, so just switch back to
I think the first website here is really good too, so I think let's see it, see what's going on.
The messaging is a great piece. I think sustainability is something that's more and more accepted, and people will generally make a choice based on if it's sustainable and what the impacts are. And I agree. I think that's great. Where it's problematic is how you present it in a way, and I think unfortunately public perception, you only get one chance, and then it's, you know, it can swing either way. And I think that's where we're sort of balancing at the moment. How do we do it in a way that is well received, that people get on board, or without losing too much interest?
But we can start piloting that social stuff even before any of them are built, you know, with lots of the.
Yeah. What's the demographic that your visitors, like, is it people with kids
Families?
or is it?
Look, yeah, well, I couldn't give you exact numbers, but we, I mean, for those that have been through the various parts on the weekend, it ranges, you know, from Monday through to Sunday.
So we need mini toilets.
Very,
We need big ones that can be used.
yeah, look, that could be, I mean, to
Part
increase
of the
the
education.
volumes. I think generally mum or dad generally is there to help, but,
So actually, yeah, I'll skip some slides and go to this because we started talking about it. So are we going to be able to get enough urine? That's the key question. When we ran that project with urban utilities back a few years ago, that was the big problem. We sized something up thinking we're going to get, in that case, it was probably 20 liters a day, and then we got 20 liters a week. So it was going just pretty slow, but we solved it. We started to collect urine from the university, bring it over to luggage point. So just going the same way as the sewage goes, but coming in a drum and ending up in the same place. So I got this slide from Mark Evans sent me some of this stuff. Yeah. So they put some loggers on the doors of the toilets down at the barbecue area here. And there's 10 cubicles in there. So that's quite a few, and that's the usage that we could gather out of it. So the first point was Monday, so that was inclusive of the previous 3 days. And then the other days are weekdays. So you can see it ranges between over 100 to 300 visits a day. So we don't know what people are doing in there, but if we make some easy assumptions, like 200 mils for urination, that translates to 40-60 liters a day for the whole lot, 10 cubicles. So how can we get 300 liters a day out of one? So it looks like it's just the problem is huge. These are winter numbers, and even, you know, people are not going out as much in COVID times, but in summer it might go up, but how much? Maybe the only time we can get enough is if there's a festival on the site. So we're going to site something for 300 liters a day, but then only 3 days a year is going to be used capacity. Perhaps it's not ideal. So definitely, at Sydney, they have a whole building, it's already there, so they got the volumes there. Yeah, we discussed even, are we going to be able to put toilet in different locations where we have events, but then, you know, moving it, like on a crane truck, and then moving the urine, a huge tank, back to where the treatment system is. The cost just cannot cover with the budget. So really, it has to be in one place because that's the cheapest way we can do it. But what's the best place with what we have available? So, like, probably not right next to where you have 10 cubicles, because that people, of course, have a choice, but that means, they still might go to the normal ones, and the numbers are already so low. If we look at the individual toilet, so it could be as low as 30 in one day or less. So that's in and out, divide by 2, 10, 15. So we could really end up getting 1 liter in a very worst case scenario where we're going to go 300.
Stefano, is that other research that said that people have to have a choice? Like, is that?
Well, you have to give them a choice, but at the same time, there's many toilets also nearby in the park. So I don't know if,
Because I think, I don't know, maybe the choice is that they have to walk another 500 meters, so they're more likely to use yours. Do we have to have them choice? Yeah, I don't know. It's not social.
I think the choice is because before they already had to go to that toilet. So you can argue if we put in a toilet, but there's no other toilets today. Before there was 0 toilets there, so they still had to walk.
You would need to decide who's going to that one.
Well,
Unless
so
you make unisex just
can we make it
accessible
just,
to anybody.
Yeah, universal, so that.
So all the toilets throughout Run Street are unisex. We don't actually have male or female, and that's really just the patronage usage. It would be too hard. We'd have toilets everywhere to accommodate each.
So yeah, this is one of the big issues to work through, because
There's only one. Yeah. That's not right.
well, we don't know it in terms of costs. So it's going to cost us, $5,000-$10,000 to get a nice demountable, and we can't fit so many in the budget. Pilot itself is going to be 100,000 all up. So
The other consideration we put to that is the logistics. It costs a lot more to move a larger unit than it does, and we've got a lot more flexibility with the smaller unit to push it into some of those event nodes where we might get a really big use. The other thing is with connection into existing sewer for overflow. That's an important consideration as well. And it's sort of that balancing act of what's big enough to get more volume, but what's too big that we can't actually get the flexibility to put into different spaces.
Depending on the event, you could get more amphetamines and drugs in there.
well, you know,
It
it gives you more
interesting.
fun. I mean, you can distill. So we can start from the classic ugly looking Waterloo. Move on to something that looks fits project better, and those are the ones that this company Waste Development and Waste D is developing in California. We had a talk with them and asked them if they can send us one of the toilets in kind.
Oh.
They don't know yet, but we can even pay for it, you know.
You can see from a public perception point of view, someone would want to walk into that thing and they're going to get teleported to the next favourite spot as opposed to, a team shed.
To feel like you're doing time.
No one wants to feel like a construction worker.
Yeah. I mean, personally, before walking to one of these, I really need to feel like I'm about to die. Because when you open the door,
In summertime, you actually do.
You have one-way endurance, maybe. You have a feeling of no one can see you.
So that's all there.
I think to the modern culture, gives it that futuristic feel, and this is like a
Cleaner, safer.
Yeah, that's trying to transform formative things. Yeah, sort of it speaks to that.
Yeah, and then like had streaming videos of the whole project, what it's about, and what they're doing, like live cam on the field trials in Toowoomba, but also like locally, perhaps right next to it, have a contained little garden
Yes.
that showcases.
This is the output that they
Yeah,
are contributing
correct,
to.
yeah.
You don't want it to feel claustrophobic, so you could have it so that there's a one-way mirror they can see out. No one comes look in the garden.
They don't have to stay there too long.
That's true.
When you
Yeah.
Stefan, we need to talk about industrial design kind of student programs.
Yeah.
Kind of university.
Exactly, competition, make a competition.
Yeah.
We also talked about embedding the treatment system in the toilet as one product. These waste D guys are quite interested in that. But that would be interesting, but then we just, well, we are confined to this small amount of urinals. If we want to capture 100 liters a day, then we need a stack, which doesn't really fit in there. So if it's a toilet that is used by a small number of people, family, and the design of it. But here, we're after some volumes that enable the research that we need to do. So if it's too small, then we're going to be fighting for that bit of urine that we started.
Well, it can be on a slope so that you can walk straight into it, that you can sort of access the container from the back on a slope, so it's not as, you don't have to have those ugly containers, the collection containers.
Collections,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like you
If you have a large enough pipe that is,
vertical.
well, if it's vertical, you have no problem. If it's a slope but without horizontal bits, it could build up a bit, but before it blocks, it would be a long time, especially if it's used regularly, and especially if the pipe material is really hydrophobic. So,
I think if I get what you're talking about is
Aesthetics.
If you have here the toilet and people walk in, but at the back of the tank.
It's accessible to the truck,
So-
to remove the.
A difference in the gradient of the land, so
Oh, yeah.
the tank is here and the toilet's here.
well, that would really be dependent on the availability of a site like that, where we would need like a vertical step and put the toilet on top of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of slope in the
Yeah.
park.
There is, and a lot of it is DDA compliant because of the gradient. That's the other challenge you've got when you start to look in areas that aren't flat.
But yeah, so this is something we haven't solved yet. So we keep looking at the log is still on.
Yep.
Yeah, so we can see if summer looks a little bit better. I mean, if we can get much larger number in summer, that would be actually quite good. Then we can really test the system over a spectrum of usages. So high use, low use, hot and cold, other hopes and all that. But if it's still low in winter, but also that's 10 cubicles. Now, you're going to convince people to go into that particular one. And so obviously, being attractive, or can we,
Kind of like school trips,
have a
bring school classes.
raffle, like give raffle tickets, or what they do for vaccinations. You can put money there. So if you got any ideas, just click them through because, we kind of need to brainstorm this.
In Europe, we get it to offer a free one because they pay €1 to go.
Exactly.
I know where we're at now.
Curiosity.
Yeah, so I think everyone has.
Need to promote curiosity.
Yeah, send us a sketch, if you can't fall asleep in the night, you're there, and you got a pen and paper, and you just sketch it out. So we need to make it super attractive based on these numbers, so we can collect them. So we're gonna order this system from Adam, and then if we can't really use it well, we can still send it to Sydney, and they can use it there, but we still need to make this node operating. So
Or even
we want to
pilot.
get as much.
if we've got good photographs or sketches, we can file it in the social thing with sort of focus groups of different ages and families and.
So to make it more attractive, like the same, the blue Waterless, a lot of rappers or something else can actually turn or external demographic. It's a different lesson, like in Harlem or something. People being inclined to go there and again, start with that, that get more attractive. Right? This is known from blowing this one, but the easy solution to change the same thing without much of capital is to apply a vinyl wrap.
Yeah.
So vinyl wrap on like garden-based background.
Yeah.
So people will actually forget about it's a presentation of the view. Right?
Yeah.
So internally, externally, they can actually do that. That's a cheaper solution rather than redesigning, asking for anyone that's existing structure there. You're not actually altering anything, not redesigning. Always costs a lot. Remanufacturing. So altering the same with the vinyl cheap wrap. So fastest, easiest way.
Doesn't look disabled accessible.
No, disabled. There are disabled but
Is
that
it?
would be bigger.
Yeah, the blue one's actually an ambulatory toilet.
The blue one,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's ugly. But what about the third one, that wasty?
No, that's US.
Yeah.
We talk yes, Stefano and I were talking
But
about
that's only
it.
one by the time they send it from
Ten, weren't
US.
they haven't quite fully developed at the time. Is that right? Or they were right in the middle of
Well,
getting
they
it
started
together.
to manufacture it, so they're really new.
And they were pretty
They
keen.
just startup.
Mm.
But yeah, they want to make regular urine to use to make fertilizers, so they're really quite behind.
Yeah.
Scott, what was the offer from Chris? Did you say you could pilot like captain design?
Well, I reckon it's the focus group thing. Like the survey, people don't write much, but if you show people things and focus group it, and then you get their instant feedback on what do you like about it, what don't you like about it, what little features are important to you. It's cheap.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Focus groups. You know, so I've run a lot of focus groups, but often we set up in a library or it's just a public space here at the parklands. It's not hard to, and you can actually go through these recruitment companies to find a representative type of group to focus group and stuff.
Yeah. And we could link, as you said, I think we talked last time about getting some design students, or there could be a competition around that skin or that vinyl.
With the architecture.
We make it a competition, and yeah, there's that attraction, like people like to join a competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gets that interest up straight away.
And the prize is their design goes on our logo.
Yeah. Oh, it goes on the toilet?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, right.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
That was something that we did when we were talking about some in-kind contributions of buildings. Unfortunately, we were faced with a bit of a supply-demand issue at the moment with the affordable buildings industry. And that's what we said, look, here's an opportunity if you provide the building, we include your logo in a bit of like a skin that would market what it was. The problem we faced was they've got no product to contribute. It's a case of, I guess their business model is to make money. Do I contribute? Why would I do that when the market's busting at seams and I can go and the worst bit of product I've got on a building site can get paid for it. So yeah, it was disappointing, but we face that even with the purchase of buildings for projects we've got at the moment. We had 3 companies actually just declined to tender because they've got too much work.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a tough one that we were faced with.
Makes Waterless. Maybe that'd be interested in.
Getting the sustainable version.
Yeah, because
Some greenwashing.
down the track, if it works, these things go out and then they've got to get rid of what's in them. So if part of that getting rid of is actually a product to supply, they'd be interested in that downstream.
That's probably the hires. A lot of them are imported direct out of China. There's not a lot that are manufactured internally. There's a few of the blow-mold companies that will make their own tanks and that, but I think it's been very hard for them previously to compete in that market. Things have changed a little bit now, and people are slowly coming on board with self-performing a lot of those tasks, but it's just trying to find that right company and then can they do it cost effectively.
So the other question I have is where does that urine go currently?
From Waterless.
Yeah.
There's the truck which actually goes, typically on the construction side, as you can see, Queensland is actually busting the construction site every single day. So wherever there is a construction site, it's a regulatory hub that you need to have a for loop, but there is a collection tanker which goes in every week. It depends on the how many people work in the construction site. Sometimes the supervisors actually call, get there, or it's a regular intervals they go actually collect and put it in the store. This is the tank, collection tanker. It's sucked out.
And I assume that they're adding chemicals in that to it to reduce the
No, some of the sumps like that one there, that's not a chemical.
No,
That's
not
because they feed it into via sewer, so it would be overflow and they'll pump it out. But yeah, look, it's a cost to every construction and development company.
If we can actually pull it out, but again, it's mixed with feces and also urine. It's a combination. It's like only a flop, unless you alter that with the other side where the urine gets collected, and then the flop where those feces goes there. And that has to be in proper the design of the outlet, this urine collection. It can be done. It's not hard. So
No
it's just a mold, right?
matter what we get, it will have to be modified for urine separation.
Yes.
Do we have any stakeholders involved in that green labelling, certification, green sustainability stars? They green buildings, I don't know who gives green certification.
What's it called? NAPR.
That NiCE is quality control.
ISCO rating.
ISCO rating. Yeah, that'd be interesting if we could get whatever we develop, given our sustainability rating stars. Then companies will want to have it because they want it on their books that they're contributing to.
I think if you can pitch this to an organisation, particularly construction and development companies, to say the moment you pay to get rid of your waste, we'll offset that cost by X amount.
And give you stars.
Exactly right. They'll jump at the opportunity.
The Brisbane City Council, with the Olympics coming up, they've got a promise to be the most sustainable games.
So I guess with that construction site, that construction market, what you might get at scale, but you're trading off like the community engagement side.
That could undermine the whole thing if we don't put enough into the design and they don't accept it. It falls through.
You might end up with too much bubble.
We could take you to the Woodford Folk Festival and make lots of around.
I think more urine beer.
If you put it at Woodford, then you run it for 2 weeks, and then you bring the urine back to them, keep going for a while.
You've got your COVID test at the RNA if there's some good COVID.
So you look at your calendar throughout the year.
Theoretical volume in 2 weeks.
I'm going to hear a list of festivals in Queensland. I've also now put it in special actually.
So the challenge is like we don't have budget to move it here and there.
The logistics of it is very costly.
Unless we get more
But if
stakeholders.
companies that are into that market, then you might some of the willing to support it. If they're willing to support it, then that is one way that you could get a scale. It's not volume.
It's a big quarterly.
Code side and the Canada side, those are the people. There are other local companies as well, but I think to capture this, as a trial or pilot, better to actually incorporate the portal for construction sites and also small sites. And the next one, number 2, for events, right? So again, if you can actually build, incorporate smaller urine tanks within those two, first two, that'll be easier to achieve immediate profit or immediate achievement. That's not going to stop construction. That events is not going to stop. That's across Australia. Every event, Mount Road, showgrounds, you name it, everywhere is there, right? Tell us one function that the second one is not there. Every function that's there. So you need to incorporate a separate urinal collection. That's transportable. So that's very easy. And also the mining companies, they all the mining companies have and must have. I've been in a lot of mining sites. So that's the one, right? They're all actually dongers. Every mining company has that dongle. If you connect to mining companies, again, that's existing. The urinal is there. All you need to just is divert it into a separate collection.
We can do that drug testing for free.
Yeah, the mining site will definitely, there's no some mining company around without that. Bigger offices, actual offices have that, bigger.
And transport main roads, I think, on their construction sites, but they have bigger, sorry.
Bigger construction projects, that's there. Smaller house residential, this protocol is there.
I think as we grow, it will be great to look into, to get started. We need that public engagement to.
Yeah, because the people who use the ones on mining sites and stuff, they're used to using dollars like that. But they're trying to get one
That's their office,
publicly,
yeah,
so it's horses for courses. Maybe we develop a different thing for events and mining sites, but one that blends in with the community for the parklands.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the Cross River Rail right next to this parkland.
Ah.
So if you were actually to talk with them about putting one of those donor blocks in
And the
there.
council-
It's already there, you're free round trip, that's all.
Well, if
Second
that,
front.
if that was on their side, then shifting it from there to the processing plant is a big transport
It is,
cost.
yes. That'll always be the case.
So, and that's a government project as well.
This is one discussion, all those stakeholders, I guess.
Yeah, and have them early on.
You kind of need something fancy like that in the parkland and that's a public sort of facing thing, but then you need more urine to do the project. So finding an active construction site where you could put the donor.
There's so many infrastructure projects happening, every one of them has that.
And we're fine with that.
And they don't care that it looks
Okay.
like that.
No, they don't.
Exactly. No, it's a separate drum, so they're not, it's visible by the fire, the plumbing, the pieces. The urinal is like separate plumbing, you can see that. Like a big stainless steel one, you can see that. So those things, for men's I'm talking, but sorry. You can actually divert the plumbing with the side drum.
I mean, rather than bringing up tank down at the bottom all the time, you can have pump in the pipe and just make it run somewhere
Yeah.
acceptable.
Most of the infrastructure projects or the mining or construction, they will all be accepting your proposal because that's something good, they want to do something good. I mean, very hardly, very seldom people say, no, I want to be part of that. But,
And the big construction companies like Hutchinson and stuff,
everyone will
they
say
want the
yes,
green
yes.
label.
We think we did talk to land leases.
Hutchis,
Yeah,
BMD, those guys are very easy to work with this stuff because they come and actually showcase the projects that are proposal forward. So they will all be inclined to, okay, that's a good deal because they want to put the benefit across as well. So we are doing something.
And you're also reaching all the construction workers are being exposed as well. You can put your story in there and tell the stories to all the people who are using that side as well.
Yeah, it's
Just
just
as another opportunity.
300 liters a day. We're gonna have to actually move it here somehow, and that's a lot of, with a tanker, it's a lot of trips.
Yes.
That's,
If you want 300 liters, you need to be able to collect it and transport it. That should be part of the business case. As a processing, right?
But it might be for an industry partner that is their contribution,
Orderly people are going to move it anyway.
Yeah.
It's got to go somewhere. We want, it's to be
Yeah.
tapped into
There's
that.
not a risk of contamination because they also pump out some of the chemical pollutants which don't have a chemical in them, so.
have to be a dedicated one.
Because there's a bit of a mapping exercise really about locations
Yeah.
and distance and.
Optimization, there you go, so you can do a little optimization.
So what is the minimum volume you need, like, threshold 300?
we said we should do 100, but
Minimum
otherwise, it's hard to call it a scale up. Sydney, you want it to be, kind of parallel to Sydney, over there there's a building, it's easy to them, they get easily 500 liters a day.
This is an interesting question, though, with respect for the project to operate. Whatever we do here,
need to be what we need in the future.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
But with this, we've also looking into the future about buildings that are fit for purpose, like your diversion in Brisbane. And it's getting that sort of mindset.
Yes,
Right, a bit like a Melbourne new campus. You know,
I think, ultimately, if this is going to grow, we're going to have to get it.
Yes.
It's not just water.
I think it's a building thing, because that's what they have.
It is, but if you start with the construction industry being part of the projects by supplying it,
Yeah, that's a good way of.
I think that the only company was on board that pulled out. IT group, NiCE construction.
probably better contacting.
Leslie's got some, they're sitting on the same board who you're doing with the DSD, state development on the biofeatures.
So what do they?
So Leslie said, working with, or engaging with the type of state development Queensland. So, it's just very life based.
Leslie's also have a program because they've got a little certificate, they're also like some quite events.
So there's some connections.
Features. So they've kind of been delving in this world of that environment.
Yeah.
Do you have a contact?
Yeah.
We spoke to Karen Graves previously, and so Leslie, she's the National Sustainability Coordinator and Regional Sustainability. We talked to her a year and a half ago about Garabella. I can't really remember how that went up to the workforce of Victoria.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. So we do have a contact with Leslie, and I think we're probably, now that we've got something a little bit further, I think that have a basic discussion is going to be helpful.
Yeah, and that's circular economy base.
I think if you guys initiate the contact is a little bit more powerful. Of course, the hub is funded, so that might not mean much to them, but we will be able to you guys initiate contact. And yeah, I think so. Out of this discussion, I think what we can do is put one beautiful toilet and a system here on a permanent basis for the version of the hub, and then just go out and talk to the construction industry, mining industry.
Donation points.
And then, see if they're interested in contributing, not only the urine, but also to fund the tank,
the transport.
The transport the urine back. So if
then would the treatment facility be here?
Well, so that's at the moment that's it because
It could be here, it could be, again, the maintenance facility, we've got Victoria Park's clean slate, it's actually out of the way of public eye, so there's an opportunity there to look at some different venues. The problem we've got with Roman Street South Bank, as you can see, it's already developed, so other than our maintenance facility over there that's got a PDA on it, and it's temporary in nature, but the construction side, but it's really trying to make sure that we put it in a spot where we can look at that scalability and volume, particularly with the truck, if you pump a large volume, we want to be able to get it in there and discharge it.
Do you know that place at South Bank where they have the stormwater, and it's actually a display where they
Rain bin?
Yeah. No, I was thinking that is like an environmental education, if you can have like a little amphitheatre like they have. And a glass wall and they can see the treatment sort of going on.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity. I think it's probably then, I think the emissions that the discharge from it as well, it's something
You can't be smelling.
Yeah, exactly right. Like something like the building there that's on the sun, and then the core team could manage and service the green wall around the whole thing. That's easily done. And the hard thing we've got is we've got to come up with all of the objections of public or before we put it in place. We can't put it in as part of our management agreement. Our KPIs are visitation, and if that drops, we'll then,
But also for the project, it'll destabilise it straight away.
Yeah.
I think that's when think we need to map that stakeholder
Mhm.
engagement piece as well, because you might have a beautiful urinal or toilet block here. You have an interactive piece, you have video of the pilot performing it, and then maybe the pilot is a bit more tucked away, where you're still engaging with stakeholders, like your stakeholders, I suppose, that are, managing parks, managing facilities, and still utilize the technology.
At that point, if it's separate, then this can be just a display. We don't really even need to collect the urine.
Oh.
I mean,
Then it wouldn't smell at all.
that we will need to find. Yeah.
They've got to try it.
So, but the majority of the urine will come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit double pronged. It's your commercial approach and then your public facing approach. And how you balance the two. Is it large volume and turnover and revenue, or is it here's a good news story and it's pleasing to the sustainability?
But if you don't have a working prototype, they're not going to believe you that it can be built. Nice beds.
Right. People do want to see and touch things.
We don't want to touch.
I think too, because, the toilet design were applied for future large scale like buildings will be used people. So if you can have that as your public facing piece, so people understand.
Curious.
You can have a toilet that separates, but then in terms of actually achieving the science piece of the project, you just need a big different to work with. So you need a workforce, probably predominantly male, and it goes.
Yeah.
Because
Because they're all day long, they're mostly.
we really had a hard time. It was like, 5 people probably at the innovation center. Regularly.
We were trying to get contractors. Blocking up toilets.
Like sheet that goes to toilet. So so that's. Okay, so that's good feedback. And I think the work would be identifying these new partners that can give us access to more urine, convince them to contribute just the cost of the transport. They already have to pay for that waste to be taken away.
So on the transport part, there are the companies which come with the pump and has a bigger tank, but probably you might need to work with that. Not really dedicated, it can be the same tanker, but rather than the tankers are always actually in sections. Some of them are fully monolithic. You can actually have sections. Probably out of the 4 sections, 1 section can be just purely urine. The other 3 can be monolithic. So one thing is there's 2 suction points. Again, because urine is going to be collected separately, you can actually just, it's like a vacuum, just plug it in, it'll suck out urine, goes to the smaller tank, and the major pieces and the flushed one can go to the monolithic bigger 3-part one. So that's actually you incorporating, you're not actually more cost. Still, one person comes there. One of the things is has 2 suction points. Urine, smaller portion, major pieces, and then of course that person always carries water because he actually fills in water for the hand flush and also the hand wash and the flush. So you need to accommodate that. It's a small tank, right? So that's easier to achieve. Maybe not easier to achieve. You need to incorporate that to the suction thing, the tanker. That'll be the best way to go.
Tankers are really in a company.
Yeah, they're part of the service. So you pay probably, I think the monthly, it's only pretty minimal cost, around $100 to $120 per month. And that includes servicing as well.
Yeah, so that's pump out, water it back into the tank. Actually, it's less than that from memory. It's quite cheap.
With the exhibition, once COVID lets us have the Brisbane exhibition again, that's masses of people, but also the education value, where they have the agricultural homes. We can link it all back to food security, show the circular economy.
Because you have funds, because you can use this fund to actually redesign the suction tanker So that they're the people who will definitely help you out, because I'm talking about the construction industry and the major infrastructure projects like Hachis and PMGs and all those guys will definitely be able to help you out. But the thing is, who is actually transporting it? Who can transport that for you? That's the person. You're just only getting a permission. Okay, do it. That's the permission you're getting from the customer side. But the transporting people are your key stakeholder, and they're going, because you want to design the whole system. This instance, you're going to have one more pump, so that's the cost of your, part of the funds you have to use that. So that's where your money is.
Does the coast fires of the world organise on that?
Yes, correct. They have subcontractors. It's not actually coast fire.
But I mean, toilet and like when they provide it like off there.
Correct. Yes. They keep a clean, empty one. Of course, from that point onwards, the pump trucks comes in every fortnight, or it's more water every week. So they can clean. And then there's
they drive to where?
sewer.
Yeah. So what is that licensing? Where are they allowed to?
Yeah. Pump it out.
If you guys get on that discount.
To be able to just charge.
But you don't.
Okay, so good ideas. So I think in the end, here we'll put a good looking toilet and maybe just a poster, a visual, and a garden, maybe like a confined garden that people cannot touch. With the flowers grown, with that, any like educational material. Then the pilot itself can sit anywhere hidden. It can be in your working area, out the back, here parklands or Korean Park. And it's win-win. We're still doing. Now the challenge is to actually find these contacts.
Easier. It's not hard, but there's just one call with coast fire.
Is there still an opportunity to have, you have school groups going through that kind of, like, still walk them past?
So we've actually got an old Queensland carriage sitting in on stilts that we just can't get rid of in that spire, which we've spoken, the maintenance facility, which we've spoken about. Look, do we convert that? Because I mean, it needs some refurbishment, but whether you tidy that up and use that as a bit of a classroom for kids, and what we do there is quite sustainable with green waste. We actually take a lot of green waste from South End as well and convert that back on the soils and put that back in. So there's a big push on really how we don't market or not sell it, but we don't actually put that out to the general public to say, this is how we keep the park so good. So yeah, look, there's an opportunity down there to convert that old carriage and use that perhaps.
At the food eatery area, it's strengthening at the park. That's what they've done. They've got an old tram or something.
They're on another one.
But they've repurposed the indoor into a nice water toilet.
Yeah, okay.
That's pretty cool. So
Yeah, just to add to that team, I know at the Innovation Centre, the formula we've used is, embracing both past, present and future. And this project certainly has that. The carriage brings that past element into it. And history just sort of is a nice juxtaposition because it shows we've always continually innovated and engaged, and looked to change. And it's always great if you can repurpose some sort of historical artifact and then intertwine that into that story. So I think that's a pretty cool piece you've probably got there that you could probably leverage quite well.
We can't give it away, Colt, so it's there for the team. It's down at our main maintenance facility where we stockpile all of our green waste.
But someone else's trash could be you gold treasure for an education.
There's some great ideas.
Okay, so
That's good ideas. Who's taking note of this?
well, it's recorded, so we can. And so, but really, like when we start with that, I think, you say this is I think he volunteered. But otherwise, I think we get a good picture that would be quite acceptable also for your management.
Yeah, look, the city parkland, so we've got a high level of governance, particularly from the design perspective. So anything that gets put forward, we actually have to go through a design review committee before it's approved. That will come back with questions, support, not supported, and we'll have to work through that.
Couldn't we meet with them sort of even early to say, well, what sort of things are completely off the table, so we get some down?
It's subjective, because you go into a committee, the first thing they'll say is show me what we've got, rather than this is what we don't want.
Right.
The treatment, to put it out the back, then it can be coming in a container. If it's given.
If it's, yeah, look, in our maintenance facility, and then if you went there now,
And then, you know, there's a
like, it's not public wasting, that's for
If you have a-
sure.
if you have a spill, okay, you deal with it, but it's not an emergency for public ground. I think that, you know, we can work with that.
Yeah.
And the toilet is the real
You've got the opportunity to bring heavy vehicles into that facility as well, so going scalability size, you can put a 20-ton truck through the tanker down to a small vehicle.
So I think we're on to something.
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah,
So we didn't talk about permits, but based on what you heard, we need to get material permit before we get started. And what do we need a permit for?
So transporting the urine would be a regulated waste. And you require, like any of the companies that we talked about, have the permits. So if you're using that, but if it was for some reason not that situation, you wanted to just transport it as part of the project, then under 250 kilograms, if it's not commercial purposes, then.
But 250 kilos, but that's 250 liters,
Yeah.
yes, what we want every day.
Yeah.
If we don't want to transport every day, then we need to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But if you go
But if
to a
you're
third
using-
party, they
Yeah.
would have to permit. So someone like Clean Line or Top
Yeah,
Street,
that's right.
You're not
Yes.
bringing, you're not putting it in your car. That's not really on the rules.
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me if I only.
Right. So, okay, so we just have to get some direction, but first we find the right people, then we solve.
I don't see it as a big challenge. It's easily achievable, it could be achieved.
And then for that final fertilizer, so it's just for research, we need, and the
You
waste.
have to produce 200 tons of fertilizer every year to actually go to
200 tons,
like, yeah.
200 tons a year.
Not from the country.
And that's all nitrogen based fertilizer, or is that
So,
sort of liquid fertilizer?
because with liquid fertilizer, you can have like a tiny bit of nutrients and water, but so the tons are based on
With the concentration level as well. You know, with nitrogen, and that's only 5% as opposed to your general, which is hazardous on any truck is 20. Yeah, in a granular form.
And waistcoat though would be as well, because so many,
Yeah,
you
and
have
the waste-
biosolids, biochars.
It's not so there's two things. One is the activity of making fertilizer, requires environments or thresholds for that. And then the other aspect is actually what you're doing with the product, if it's considered to be a waste, then an waste.
And I think if you look into land application as well, then, of course, through all the whole process of characterising and then doing the potential of looking at, how the any contaminants are being either mobilised in the soil or even uptaken by a crop. That's all part of what we're doing in land. But, yeah, that's what this is. We will by hand.
I just have to check the thresholds for the fertilizer. Yeah, we can look at that. Really, just look and join it.
Okay.
So it'll be that. After you're actually.
Yeah.
The waste portion, obviously, might go to sewer in the first instance. And it's just the action.
So yeah, if we have full capacity 30 liters per day, so it's about 10,000. 10 tons. 10 tons.
The logistic is actually the challenge of this whole thing. That's what I'm talking about, the trucks, right? And then the logistic is about where you're going to place your manufacturing facility, converting to the, so that doesn't trigger a EA. But the thing is, if only you could actually have your, the manufacturing facility close to the point where they're going to discharge. There are other, say 1/4, 3/4, that portion. If it is close to that, then it's all like one facility where they're going to discharge it, and the other side they're going to discharge the urine separately. So you're not actually doing any additional transport. Transport always costs a lot. Busing is actually a pain. But if only your manufacturing facility is just next to where the discharging the pieces facility or the running trucks.
So really depends who owns the land.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. There's definitely discharge facility for them. If you get talk to them, they'll definitely tell you that's not a hard thing. Fine. And just having yours next to that. Yours is just a container.
They're doing the same shit.
Exactly the same treatment. So I think it is less you. Okay. Well, your main partner is not other people. Your partner is the guy who transports. Right? For now, for getting this into bulk.
Before everyone goes, we haven't actually introduced each other.
People
are leaving.
have left.
Yeah.
But,
Just
name and organization. Yeah.
Oh, Senthil Kumar, Urban Utilities, technology, partner. That's the main thing. So I get technology back.
Jason Roy, R&D at Urban Utilities. Matthew Willis, Engineering Resources.
Oh.
Tony Sutton, I'm the Projects and Assets Manager for City Parks. And Michael Byron, Delivery and Commercialisation Manager for Urban Utilities.
Benedict Kate from the Centre for Agriculture Engineering at the University of Queensland.
Enrico from Griffith University School of Pharmacy and Medical Sciences.
Carabelle from Griffith University Civils Research Institute and School of Clinical Science.
Brad Jackson, Director of the Water Unit at Queensland Health.
Rachel, and I work in climate change and circular economy.
I'm Brisbane and I work in licensing and purpose rest.
So you're the one who's giving the EA.
That's why I'm regulating.
Whenever utilities is the fact, went from Queensland to you,
and when you read up the lot that you want to introduce yourself.
Sorry again. Yeah, I'm Cole Chapman, Urban Utilities, Innovation Research and Development Manager.
Adam already. Steve, I guess. Okay.
G'day, Hayden Woodall. I'm from the Department of Environment and Science. I work alongside Chris, so in the approvals and regulation side.
Good, are you there?
Because it's also with Dennis in our science, water science division.
All right, so thanks, that was a really productive meeting. We got a lot of good ideas. Yeah, so what's next? So next we communicate offline. We have to make decisions on what we put here on the site and what permits we need and who we contact to try that deal that we're so confident about.
Yeah.
So we don't need to all communicate together, but as needed, we will copy.
We do need to. It'd be really handy to have a communication platform where we could just upload ideas.
Oh, there was a Teams channel.
A Teams channel.
A Teams channel. We haven't really used it much.
This channel across we launched our ideas.
So will does it work? Because I created it, but there was no
external.
So I just try passes the King Channel to Brisbane North. So if you do what you want with it.
Okay.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Alright, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Anytime.
Right.
Anytime. You need the venue. And this is what we do now. None of this study. Kryptonite is the Hey, I was just thinking before none of the directors.
Yeah,